Alright, let's talk about Endo CPU, which is a purple add-on for Springtrap that makes it so that whenever you enter your bubble from your axe, you get the benefit of increased action speed of 40% for damaging and breaking objects for 5 seconds. The 5 seconds doesn't happen until you leave the bubble, and the 40% is just there once the animation starts. Now, a few things to note with this is that 40% increased action speed on this is actually kind of nuts when you really think about it. Brutal strength is only 20%. Fire Up would need almost all of its stacks to reach this amount. The only thing I can even find that's faster than this, and you guys can correct me on this, is the Wraith add-on that does a very similar thing when he's cloaked, and that goes to 60%. So this add-on is definitely one of Springtrap's best add-ons. Probably top 3 or 4, if I'm perfectly honest with you guys. And I really didn't think about it too much because I don't run it personally, but this add-on allows Springtrap to basically ignore one of his biggest counters, which is how some loops he just can't play properly. And the fact that he's 110, it just makes a lot of loops irrelevant for the survivors to use. You can dead zone them with it, and while you can't, break the pallet and rush them like other dash killers can, it can still be very useful to put survivors in a position where they're almost guaranteed to land a hit. Now, it should be mentioned at the making of this video, the new patch hasn't dropped where more pallets are being placed on the map, so I don't know how it's going to affect that. But in the current state of the game, it is very good. This also works on generators and breakable walls. Breakable walls, not that big of a deal, but generators, you can also use this comboed with Pop Goes the Weasel and things like that. So even then, it can have its uses. Now, before we get into some other aspects of it, I do want to talk about combos with this. So, I did mention Brutal Strength and Fire Up. In general, I don't think it's worth comboing them. Yes, it is an insane amount of break speed, and you can break the pallet in like 0.7 seconds. And I'm going to have that on screen here, showing the difference in like what it is base with Brutal and with Fire Up. But it really doesn't matter too much. 40% is fast enough on its own that it's perfectly fine. The problem with Endo CPU is trying to use it correctly, because worst case scenario is that you're landing your axes, and you never get the Endo CPU effect. Now, the thing with this is if you're landing your axes, you're probably winning, so it doesn't matter too much. Or you're holding your axe too much, and then you're also probably losing or not playing Springtrap properly. But the thing with that is Endo CPU gives you options at a lot of loops. You can throw it down on the correct side, run the survivor around it, and it doesn't buff them. Much like Chica's Bib, which is a downside that only survivors experience, this is an upside only you experience. It has no effect on the survivor when they go through it, unlike Foxy's Hook, which can backfire in your face or even Celebrate Poster. As much as I love that add-on, even I understand that it can backfire. And probably one of the best things to combo this with, outside of the obvious, which is Menu, because it lets you throw the axe down with less punishment so you can just pick it back up when you need to, is Party Hat. And the reason for Party Hat is because you can put it anywhere in a loop virtually and get the effect at any point. You don't have to be as precise with where you aim this to get the effect. Which leads me into some other little cool things you can do with it. Some people know this, but if you throw the axe directly in the pallet, once you kick it, you'll get your axe back immediately. Now, there is still a cooldown period, but you can basically get it back as soon as you break it, especially if you waste the survivor's time a little bit and then get a throw off immediately. Comboing this with something like Thwack can also give you aura readings so you know exactly where the survivor is going after this. Something I wouldn't combo this with is Knockout. Not a very popular perk or one that's talked about much, but because you're breaking the pallet so fast, the hinder actually doesn't apply. Another combo that I'm not the biggest fan of, but one you can definitely do, is Blood Favor or Iridescent Remnant to stop the pallet from being dropped in the first place. And then if you run out of time on those somehow, this is a good fallback for that. Not something I highly recommend, but it can definitely be good for that. But Endo CPU is also very notable because it helps Springtrap on a lot of the maps he suffers on, which I'm going to name this map and 90% of the cast suffers on it, but Gideon's Meat Plat I think is the prime example here. Springtrap really can't do too much. There are some cool hits you can get on Gideon's, don't get me wrong. These are definitely possible. But for the most part, it's a pretty linear map that he can't do too much on. He's too telegraphed. The loops make it so he can't really mind game too well. So having Endo CPU so you can just bulldoze through all the pallets is very useful. The other thing with Endo CPU, as I mentioned earlier, is the survivor doesn't get buffed. So a lot of times you can still just use it like normal and happen to get the buff for the 5 seconds linger, just then to get the pallet break and maybe get a hit off of that. So unlike Foxy's Hook, you don't really have to think about it too much. And unlike something like Chica's Bib, you don't have to miss on purpose. Yes, you do to get the effect, but Chica's Bib has the problem of if there was a situation where it would have been better to miss, you want to miss. With Endo CPU, there's often not too many situations where it would have been better to miss. Because if they get hit with the axe, you get an interstate, and then you can just break the pallet while they're running away. So in general, it's just better in a lot of those situations. But other than that, it's a pretty rudimentary add-on, and just much like a lot of the good add-ons in the game, it just works. It has a lot of good strengths, not too many weaknesses, and just overall, I understand why people really like this add-on, and why people hate some of the other add-ons.
That was the worst
Add-on.
ever of all time.
And it just again, it culminates in an add-on that doesn't really necessarily overshadow his other ones, because unlike something like Bonnie's, where people do have a problem with it, with the undetectability leaving, which is not something I really thought too much about, but Bonnie's in general is very, very powerful. CPU isn't so strong that it overshadows some of his other ones. It's actually one that I didn't realize how much people enjoy it. So we'll definitely see how this goes in the future. And with its buff that it got, it's much better than it ever could have been, and in general has some funny quirks to it. Also, you can run with something like Hubris, something like Enduring, so you can get the pallet break as fast as possible. So the 40% is even more punishing for the survivors. And again, a lot of times what survivors will do is they will wait until you throw your axe to drop the pallet. So you can throw the axe at the pallet before it's dropped, and then once they drop it, then you get the 40% break speed, and then the loop doesn't mean anything. The only thing you gotta worry about at that point is the window, and Springtrap often brings Bamboozle, a perk that when we get to the video, I will mention it, but it's basically required on this killer if you want to play him in any significant way against any competent survivors. Believe me, I know I sound like preachy with that, but it's true. But in general, I think CPU's solid. Tell me what you guys think. As always, have a good one, and yeah, bye.
Subscribe, damn it. I'll be back. I always come back, and so should you, you moron.